This thing, so it's great.
Come from a dysfunctional society.
Very dysfunctional society, so I thought, let's turn it into something useful. Good tune, lousy words, change it. So the guys get it, I plagiarized it, whoever wrote it, they can't sue me.
The chorus you'll be able to sing with. Singing the monkey wrench.
Come listen to my story, I'll tell you no lies. I was never going to try to kill the first guy would compromise. They thought that they could kill us and discredit our cause by using fear and violence like common outlaws. But Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together for to make a better day. No, Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together for to make a better day. Now Judi, Darryl, when they're driving in a car, they're gonna talk about Redwood Summer, but they didn't get very far. As the bomb was exploding to make their cause dead, but Judi's in the hospital and Darryl in jail. And it hadn't been exploded about a minute or two before the FBI was on the scene. Now that seems strange to you. But Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together for to make a better day. No, Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together for to make a better day. So Judi and Darryl had their laugh at them before, then he said that they made the bomb and they wouldn't do a damn thing more. Their evidence was sketchy, they wouldn't say a thing. The little bit tried to find the truth, but it had a hollow ring. Outside the county buildings we sang and we prayed, we screamed out protest to the sky in weather cold and gray. And the Mother Earth was weeping for those who'd been cut down, for her to bring a dead to set up in Oakland town. But Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together gonna make a better day. Oh, Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together gonna make a better day. Now some say the government and FBI is the street, some say the corporations, but most say it was greed. And we will not be stopped in our defending of the land, and throughout Redwood Summer we'll do all that we can. We'll stop the corporations from killing the trees and raping the mountains and poison in the seas. 'Cause Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together gonna make a better day. Oh, Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together gonna make a better day. Oh, Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together gonna make a better day. Oh, Redwood Summer ain't gonna be stopped this way, 'cause people gonna stand together gonna make a better day. Gonna make a better day. Gonna make a better day. So now we're going to have Andy Caffrey, I was going to say Andy Coffey, he was looking at, come up and show his videos of the explosive Darryl Cherney and Judi Bari. I have to say that.
Yeah, I'd say the explosive Judi Bari and Darryl Cherney. Considering what happened.
Yeah, okay.
Darryl invented a new bumper sticker for his car. It says, "I brake for Darryl and Judi." I warn you, compared to what you're about to see on this video, perhaps, that is mild.
Because there's some press people here, I'm going to actually do the very last thing first, which is Judy's interview from the hospital this last Sunday. So it'll take a minute or two to advance past there. Let's see if everything's working.
A several thousand-year-old pattern. The compromises that needed to be done, or the compromises have already been forced upon us by the history of unit.
No, I'm going to advance. I just want to make sure the speakers are all right. Yeah, my name's Andy Caffrey, and I was living in the Bay Area about 3 years ago. And I was an Earth First organizer. I was mainly involved with a genetic engineering campaign against the frostband test. And that campaign resulted in the first 3 tests of genetically engineered microbes being sabotaged over a 1-year period. When the 3rd test was done, the same day that the paper reported about it, there was a report about how there had been a conference. And these scientists were saying that there were going to be dozens of tests in California and throughout the country that year. Well, that was December of '87. There haven't been any tests like that since then. A year after that last test, I found out that Advanced Genetic Sciences over in Oakland, which is now called DNA Plant Technology, they were going to do a 3rd test. And we had not really gotten organized to respond to the first couple of tests, but we were ready for them this time. So I contacted the California agency that was regulating it and asked them to let me know when the public comment period started. I went away and I came back on the first day, and I got a call from a reporter who just happened to wake up that morning and see frost on the ground, and he wanted to do a follow-up story on frostband. And he called and told me that the company had abandoned their frostband, their genetically engineered microbe. Well, I didn't really believe this. I thought it was some kind of ruse because the company had played a game with us on the first test, saying it was going to be in Brentwood, which is in Contra Costa, and then it was going to be down in San Benito County and back and forth. And I was, expecting them to play some tricks once they knew that we were waiting for them. But I called up the head of the project, Trevor Suslow, and he verified that in fact they were abandoning their genetically engineered strain. They were going to go with a cultured strain. And the reason for this, he said, was, you guys don't know how successful you've been. We can't find any investors. At first, people thought that this was going to be an ecological alternative to fossil fuels and pesticides and herbicides. And they were touting it to the environmentalists as some new panacea. But apparently that image had changed, and the investors felt that they would not get their product on market in 3 to 5 years, which is what they're trying to do. And that in fact, because of the sabotage and because of nothing like that had happened before. And the sabotage was not something that I organized or a couple of hardcore people in our first organized. It came out of the community, and they realized that. And so they just felt that there was no guarantee at all that they would see a return on their investment. We're doing something similar in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Idaho. And because of that, 4 years ago, the FBI put Earth First at the top of its hit list. When I say hit list, I don't mean to kill people, although...
Yeah?
I just mean that they were the people that the FBI was most concerned about. And they have since spent, as of a year ago, $3 million to infiltrate us. Well, Dave Foreman and Mike Rozelle are probably the 2 most renowned Earth Firsters in the country. Darryl Cherney is probably number 3 before this bombing incident. Darryl was the main person who organized the campaign to save the last of the old-growth redwoods, which have gone from 2 million acres in Northern California, which is the only place in the world where they live now, down to 100,000 acres. And the largest single stand of old-growth redwoods that exists is 3,000 acres. It's called Headwaters Forest. And it's owned by Pacific Lumber Company, which was taken over by the Maxim Investment Group in 1985 in one of Ivan Boesky's junk bond deal. So the head of Maxim is Charles Hurwitz, who makes $30 million a year, $4 million salary, and I think it's $27 million return on his investment. And he pays over $80 million a year interest on his junk bonds. So what he started doing, he liquidated the assets of the company. He sold off properties. He liquidated most of the pension fund because he considered that assets of the company, not owned by the workers. Pacific Lumber Company owns the town of Scotia. It's probably the last company town in this country. It's an authentic company town. You pay cheap rent, like $250 a month for rent. You have your college education for your children paid for. You have a pension fund when you retire. It's a very nice town. The people there had a nice relationship with the company. It's a family-owned company, and they practice sustained yield. Unfortunately, they didn't cut their trees as fast as the other companies in the area did. And when Hurwitz was investigating the value of Pacific Lumber Company, he realized that it was tremendously underpriced, and so he engaged in this hostile takeover. So to pay off his junk bond debts, he's tripled the cut, and he has begun clear cutting, which the company never did before. He owns the last stands of old growth redwood. Old growth redwood is distinct from second growth redwoods. Old growth is a characteristic that happens in a forest when it's been left alone for 500 to 1,000 years. It's got about 3 times as many species in an animal species as a second growth forest. It has incredibly complex ecological relationships involving things from mycorrhizal fungi to the red tree vole, eating truffles, and then being eaten by the spotted owl. The spotted owl became a big deal because the spotted owl is an indicator species for the health of the old growth forest. They require about 1,000 or 2,000 acres per mating pair. Well, the redwoods are part of a giant ancient forest, the most diverse coniferous forest in the world, 130 million years of evolution, and it used to run from around here up to southeastern Alaska. And the redwoods were that chunk in Northern California. The spotted owl actually runs, though, from Northern California up to Washington. And the spotted owl became the center of a lawsuit by the Sierra Club a few years ago. And in the last year, it held up 1/3 of all timber sales in Oregon and Washington. The loggers and the companies launched a campaign against the spotted owl, and they printed up T-shirts that said, "I like spotted owls, fried," or "Save a logger, eat an owl." But we came back with one that said, "Save an owl, educate a logger." Because the loggers are actually incredible victims. I would say that impoverished people in this country are the only people who are, and minorities, ghetto people, Native Americans, the only people who are greater victims in this country than the loggers. These people live in an incredibly provincial environment. You drive 200 miles north of here, and suddenly San Diego and LA look like Berkeley. The differences between the cities are almost indistinguishable. And these people are the greatest victims of fundamentalism, of right-wing patriotism, of submitting to authority. They don't have very strong unions up there. Most of the loggers are not in unions. They don't challenge the unions, or don't challenge the companies when they find themselves victimized. And they are being victimized. Right now, 1/4 of all the logs that are being milled are being shipped overseas to Japan and China. Automation has put mill workers out of work. Overcutting the timber base. What's happened in the last 5 years or so is that the private timber companies, which used to harvest, we call it mining timber, because you can't grow back an old growth forest if you just let it second crop live for 100 years, they overcut their land. They ran out of a base. Their voracious appetite and our voracious appetite for wood products spurred them on. And in an economy that is based on growth, you can see how this is bound to come to a precipice. You can't just keep on cutting a forest faster than it grows back. So the timber companies then started raiding the national forests in Oregon and Washington. In Northern California, as I mentioned, Pacific Lumber has most of the old growth redwoods, and it's mainly an issue of private lands. But up in Oregon and Washington, it's national forest land. And so they're now going into everything that is not a designated wilderness area. In the video, you're going to see there are two campaigns that are focused on. One is this Maxim campaign with the redwoods, and the other you'll hear about is the North Palmaeopsis, which is in southern Oregon. It's the largest contiguous area of old growth forest remaining of the ancient forest. It's about 100,000 acres. It's Douglas fir forest, and it is the most diverse coniferous forest in the world. Unfortunately, that diversity is in the way of small plants. So it doesn't have this grand diversity that you see that inspires the Audubon Society and the Sierra Club to get involved. In fact, you might wonder why, if we're down to the last 3,000 acre stand, Sierra Club and Audubon and the rest of these people don't get involved in this campaign. They have only indirectly. The spotted owl case is sort of a general defense, but they feel they don't want to try to buy lands that are not offered for sale. And Charles Hurwitz does not want to offer his stands for sale. So they are not willing to confront property relationships in our society. The people up there in Scotia got really upset when Hurwitz started tearing apart the environment there, because everyone started to realize that their timber base was going to last for 10 or 15 years. They'd be out of jobs. And the local environmentalists began to sue. And what they were suing on is there are all kinds of laws that are passed to preserve the forests, but the agencies are not enforcing their laws. Deukmejian appoints the Board of Forestry, which manages private lands in California. All 9 of the members are loggers. And Darryl points out, not in this video, but another one, that whenever there's a vote on something, we lose 9-0. Except once, we lost 8-0 because someone was absent. They manage the Department of Forestry. They're the advisory body over the Department of Forestry, and the Department of Forestry approves timber harvest plans. These timber harvest plans are totally illegal, and we have to wait until they are submitted and then file a lawsuit on them individually. Well, it's an overwhelming task. If you get on the list to receive these timber harvest plan announcements, you get 30 or 40 each week. So the old growth forest was being cut. And we had 4 or 5 stands targeted back in 85 and 86 when Darryl and Greg King got involved in the campaign. And now it's really down to about 3. After Headwaters, the largest stand is only 300 acres. So Hurwitz took aim last fall on Headwaters. He filed 2 timber harvest plans. We got involved storming the Department of Forestry hearings and embarrassing them. And they put off the decision 8 times. Then Charles Hurwitz and Harry Merlot, and you'll hear about Harry Merlot and Judi in the tape. He's the president of Louisiana Pacific. Merlot and Hurwitz got together with the assemblyman, the state senator, and the congressman from Northern California. Dan Hauser, Barry Keene, who's the president of the state senate, and Doug Bosco. And they had this behind closed doors meeting, and they came out and said, we're not going to cut Headwaters for 2 years. They did this because Forest Forever initiative was being drawn up and about to be submitted, which would buy Headwaters. It would make clear cutting on private land illegal. It would provide support for loggers who lose their jobs. It would provide restoration funds. It's a pretty incredible bill. So these people got scared. Well, a week later, they went in and cut what they called a wildlife study trail into Headwaters, 2 miles in. It's 23 feet wide on average. According to California,
for 2 logging trucks to
I think
pass
20 feet defines a highway. So we realized it was a sham and went out there and started doing direct action. And some people, including Artemisia here, blockaded a logging truck, shut down a road that comes out from Headwaters, and climbed on top and kryptonized themselves to the logs up there and shut them down for a while, and got some pretty good attention on that. So in response to the sham with the politicians, the elected officials, the agencies, the corporate heads are not doing anything. They're not responding. Timber is the only thing that runs those economies up there, so they've got the local citizens in their back pocket. So they call for Redwood Summer, because just like Mississippi Summer, Freedom Riders, we need help from outside of Humboldt and Mendocino County. This is the last chance, because they are now cutting faster than they have ever cut before. We don't know if Headwaters will still be there by the time we vote on it in November. The initiative, by the way, qualified in 6 weeks. It normally takes 5 months. They needed 600,000 signatures, and they got 800,000 signatures. I think there's no doubt that it's going to win. So this is the last stand. After this year, Darryl, Judi, and I are out of work. There's no more old growth to protect. It'll be cut. It'll be fragmented stands. So that's where we're coming from on that. And all along, it's been a nonviolent campaign. We got attention from 60 Minutes, 2020, Time, Newsweek, Smithsonian, National Geographic, on and on and on. And it's become the largest environmental issue in this country in terms of areas that have environmental problems. And it's that kind of success that gets the FBI upset, which is why personally I'll go into the FBI attack on Earth first and what I think happened with Darryl and Judi after the video. But it basically shows that we're being successful. So what we really need to do is go in there and finish the job. So let me see if this is queued up for Judi here. Was there a picture coming out of this one? Can anybody see that one?
Close down the Potterelli.
Just a minute or so. Has anyone been up there to Humboldt County and to the old growth? Oh, okay. Well, it's an incredible place. My favorite place in the world is about 30 miles north of Humboldt. You go into these places and the trees are 360 feet tall. The largest trees are about 17 and a half feet in diameter. Imagine this ancient forest that had trees as big around diameter as this room, going up to 400 feet. That's what it used to be like 100 years ago. But we're fighting over now, in a way, are just the crumbs. All the lowland forest has been cut. These are on steep slopes, which is why they still exist.
Where you're sitting right now used to be Redwood Forest.
That's right.
Okay, we're almost there. That's right. By the way, both Judi and Darryl are in amazingly good spirits, considering what happened. And hopefully neither one of them will have any permanent damage that will affect their lives. How are you injured? Judi will mention in the interview, but she basically had a broken pelvis, a crushed coccyx, and she's got problems with feeling one of her legs. It's not certain how bad that's going to be or how permanent.
She said the first week it was really touch and go for her. She wasn't sure whether she was going to stay or leave, and it really was just feeling us holding her that kept her from dying. She was convinced she was going to die. It happened a lot of times. She had near-death experiences. It took her 2 weeks, she said, to come back into her body out of a morphine-induced haze. During the day when people are there and sharing with her, playing music, talking, it's much easier for her. At night, no one's allowed in her room, and she's somebody who doesn't normally need sleep. I mean, she says at home 4 hours sleep that was enough. Lying on her back, she needs even less. And when she's there, that's when she starts thinking about, God, somebody tried to kill me. What's going to happen to my children? She has 2 beautiful daughters I met, I think 5 and 3 or something like that. 9.
4, 5, and 9.
And it's during those times at night when she still feels a lot of pain. She really feels all the energy and love and support that people are sending her. Let me just say this, I wasn't but peripherally involved with this whole thing until the night of the bombing, and didn't meet Darryl and Judi since then. And I know you hear a lot of things in the paper and you get lots of ideas. Having met Darryl and Judi, I can unequivocally tell you they did not make that bomb. They were attacked. Judi is a farmer and a carpenter and a passionate, strong woman, and the patriarchy is afraid of women who have that power. She's a union organizer. Does that ring a bell to you? Union organizer gets blown up in car. Doesn't that sound more familiar than environmentalists are out to? Think about it. Think about it. To meet these people, Darryl is very outspoken, and he's very funny, and he likes to use words and television cameras as monkey wrenches. I think that's probably where he does this most. And matter of fact, Darryl told me he's never gone out and spiked a tree.
No,
he actually hasn't.
I know Darryl's only done one act of monkey wrenching, and I think it was letting the air out of a BLM. cop's tires.
We were talking about a total hog snake of a man. Hog snakes puff up, they sound like rattlesnakes, and they'll roll over and play dead before they'll bite you. Darryl, I mean, Andy's quoted as saying Darryl's a wimp. I can vouch for it, having met Darryl. It's true. He wouldn't hurt a flea. I mean, Darryl told me he's never even hit a person in his life. I believe him. He's my friend. So I'm going to shut up.
This, by the way, is old growth forest and trees that are up there. It's about 80 feet up to spray up. But anyways, here's Judi.
As Earth Firsters, we believe that all species is equal and no species has the right to cause the extinction of another. And that's exactly what's happening in the redwood ecosystem, that the large corporations are literally liquidating them. They're cutting them at a rate that it's going to be impossible for the forest to recover. And we see it as really a crisis situation. Another parallel to the situation in Mississippi is that although we have very broad public support both locally and nationally, locally, our towns are under the grip of a stranglehold by these timber corporations. And so just as in Mississippi, they could get away with beating up black kids when no one but Mississippi was watching, with the eyes of the nation on them, it was no longer possible for them to do it. And so we thought that by using the tactics that had been used by those before us, that we could bring some sanity to this area where they're actually destroying an ecosystem that's tens of thousands of years old for mega profits for corporations. They're destroying communities, they're destroying workers' lives, and we thought that by calling for making this a national movement and bringing the eyes of the nation on it, that we could stop this insanity. I think the energy is phenomenal. I think that every attempt that they've made to stop it has only made it bigger. Every time they call us the Terra Hydra. Every time they try to stomp out Earth First, it grows 3 new heads. I'm actually pretty sick. I'm not here for the fun of it. I was pretty badly injured. I have 4 breaks in my pelvis. My coccyx bone is crushed. I have limited feeling in my leg, and I don't know the extent to which it will recover. I have to be here in this hospital on my back for a total of 8 weeks, after which I have to begin rehabilitation to try to learn to walk again or whatever I'm going to be able to do. And I'm not going to be able to participate very much in either the organizing or the activities of Redwood Summer. Well, I think that the loggers are really scared. They're really caught in the middle. Anybody who works in the woods knows what they're doing, and they don't feel good about what they're doing. Most people who work in the woods work there because they love the woods. The reason we called for Redwood Summer this year is because the crisis is this year. We don't have any more years to wait. People have gotten together several ballot initiatives to try to restrict the logging, and the reaction of the timber industry has been to try to take every tree that they can as fast as they can to make any regulations a moot point by the time that they're passed. And once, if any laws are passed in the fall, they'll immediately sue and hold them up in court long enough for them to literally destroy the ecosystem. So we see this as a crisis. It's either now or never. So the goal of Redwood Summer is this is not a symbolic act. We hope to literally slow down the logging by using our bodies nonviolently this summer, and we hope to do that so that there'll be something left to save by the time any legislation can be passed to regulate them. I think that nonviolence is the only way that we can achieve our goals. I think that we can only answer violence with nonviolence. There's no way that we could even the unspeakable horrors that have been done to us are not in our hearts. The people who can destroy forests, we're not that kind of people, and we can't do that. And I think that the only way that we can succeed is if we answer their violence with our nonviolence. Just as the people in Mississippi were fighting for civil rights for black people, we this summer are fighting for equal rights for all species. And we as Earth Firsters believe that all species have an equal right to exist, and that no species has the right to cause the extinction of another species.
You really believe it's urgent?
I believe this is our last chance. I think that they're killing the forest. I don't just think this. I live there. I've seen it. I've seen the miles and miles of clear cut. I've seen the ruined streams. I've seen the ruined soil. The forest can't recover if you continue to cut it and cut it. And these companies don't care. All they want is profits. All they want is money. Their plan is to cut and run, and we're not going to let them do it.
really hard for me to see this. I met Darryl in 1986. He was performing at a California Earth First Rendezvous. It was at the very beginning of the campaign, and really no one knew him. And then in '87, at the Glen Canyon National Rendezvous, we became friends. A year later, I met Judi when Darryl and Judi got involved. And I lived with Darryl most of last year. We were housemates. We shared a hotel that we managed. And he and Judi and I were the main organizers running around after I moved away from here 2 years ago. So I know with absolute certainty that they weren't carrying a bomb. And it's really hard for me to see this happen to my friends. As Don mentioned, Darryl is a wimp. I mean, he's the kind of guy who takes a mattress out on a camping trip. Drove it all the way to New Mexico. You know, and don't even bother trying to talk to him in the morning before he's had breakfast. He's really cranky. Something I didn't have time to put in here, but Darryl is an amazing songwriter. One night, in front of the camcorder, he sat down and he said, okay, just throw out some topics for me and I'll write some songs. And so I mentioned that Mike Roselle had sort of become a yuppie. He's not really doing Earth First stuff anymore. He's running around to Russia and all these places. And he wrote a song, was it Mike Roselle's Gone to Hell? This whole thing is right on the top of his head. And I mentioned the earthquake here. And I mentioned how a lot of people were saying, oh, this isn't the big one. And I wanted to make a bumper sticker with like some football fan sitting in a chair watching TV saying, bring on the big one. So he wrote a song, bring on the big one, bring on the big one. Not just a 7.1, bring on the big one. This guy's a clown. I mean, if anything, he's looking for attention. He likes to be the center of attention, which is why he's a media person. As you'll see in the videos, Darryl is more oriented towards presenting things to the media. Judi is definitely the one who's more into analysis and working with loggers. And so it was a really neat blend when the two of them got together. The thing about violence, though, no one has ever been hurt by an Earth First activity except Earth Firsters. Dave Foreman was run over by a logger and his knee was damaged. The tree spiking that you probably heard about 3 or 4 years ago in Cloverdale, that was done by a Republican who was a neighbor of the LP land that tree was pulled from. And he did this because, this is from Audubon magazine now, he did this because LP had totally trashed his watershed. You know, clear cutting is not nice for creeks and fishies and the neighbors. Yeah. So the thing about tree spiking is that tree spiking is a last resort. It's done only to save pristine old growth. It's done to keep the trees standing, which is why the trees are marked with a big S for spike. The timber companies, the timber workers or their union if they have a union, the agencies that are managing it are all informed. Often it's done before the sale is even offered to keep timber companies from bidding on a sale. And as a result, we have a perfect safety record on that. However, in March, that very last clip you'll see Darryl singing a song called Earth First, there was a very significant meeting between Judi and a mill worker. He said, you know, if you guys just quit this tree spiking, which, by the way, tree spiking has not been a tactic in Northern California. It's been mainly done in Washington and somewhat in Oregon. Civil disobedience has been the tactic in California.
It's a tactic that was originally invented 100 years ago by loggers in union anti-timber company activities. So its primary history has been a monkey wrench device done by loggers in the forest against their companies when their companies were ripping them off.
The thing about tree spiking is you really have to ask yourself, how bad do I think the planet is? Most of the scientists that I'm reading about, Paul Ehrlich and David Suzuki and others, are saying we have 10 years to turn these things around on greenhouse and ozone. 10 years. I mean, someone can graduate from high school and in 10 years they just be getting their PhD, right? Well, what good is that going to do? A lot of people think that it's too late. But I think that's a bigger enemy of ours. People think it's too late. We can't do anything about it. You are just fighting over the virus. How are we going to stop the greenhouse effect? You know, we have to profoundly change our economy and our social structure and people's addictions for cars and all that. Well, if you believe that the ozone hole and the greenhouse effect and the extinction of species is a threat to your own life, forget to think for the time being about concern for other species' rights. You have to visualize this and make that visualization as vivid as seeing the redcoats storming down your street, knocking down your neighbor's doors, and shooting you. And the problem is, you have to hold that in your head. It's not there to see. You can't see the ozone hole. In Earth First, we deal with this stuff all the time. It is vivid to us. We read the reports of the conservation biologists. We read the Forest Service reports. We read the Wilderness Society reports. We talk to loggers. We talk to bureaucrats. We find out this stuff. And the differences of opinion are really not as great as you might think. So if someone is coming down the street and smashing down your neighbor's door and taking them out and killing them, do you think it'd be worthwhile to sabotage their book? I mean, a lot of people think it'd be worthwhile to kill that person. You know, and I won't argue against that if someone believes that, except that it has never really proven to be an effective tactic when the whole society is against you. And it seems like an old tactic that the brutality just doesn't crack. I mean, there's an argument that if you harm someone, maybe it's justifiable if you prevent harm to a large number of people. Well, maybe. We haven't operated that way, though. We haven't given up on shutting them down. We believe in what Nancy Reagan says, too. Just say no. Politics, to genetically engineered microbes in your backyard, to radioactive waste. I was dosed with radiation when I was 13 months old. It was a DOD test in Nevada and the entire city of Los Angeles. You've seen the test. It's the one where they show all those buildings getting blown apart. There was the first test ban, and during the last 2 months, they did 35 tests out there. And they do those tests because you can test year-round and the weather's predictable. Well, it wasn't predictable. It was the end of October '58. And this storm front just blew all this radiation down to LA, and for 6 days, I'm not certain of the exact number, but the radiation level went up to either like 4,000 or 8,000 times normal background for 6 days, and then it stayed at 80 times normal for 6 months. I don't want that kind of stuff to happen anymore. You know, I do this full time. Darryl and Judi do this full time. Judi has 2 beautiful, beautiful daughters. Messy Jessie. Darryl wrote a song about Messy Jessie. He loves it. So when one is evaluating tree spiking or anything that Earth Firsters do, I think it's to our credit that Earth First has never advocated violence to people or violence to humans or violence to any animals. Tree spiking doesn't hurt a tree, by the way. But at this meeting in March, Judi was on a panel with a mill worker and said, if you abandon this tree spiking, you might get some of us on your side. And since it wasn't a tactic we were using, it was pretty easy to say, okay, we won't spike trees anymore. But they were coming around anyways, and a lot of people were having problems with tree spiking. Because other people were taking eco-defense and spiking trees and not telling people. There was a Native American group up north that spikes some trees next to their sacred land. And, you know, they've been fucked over for 500 years. You know, they don't have as much patience as some of us white folks do. So a lot of us were feeling, you know, we don't need it. And Judi and Darryl were the leaders of the campaign to call for moratorium on tree spiking. And that was at the same time they called for Redwood Summer. So what I want to do with this video is show you what these folks are like. When I first heard about this, I saw in the news a statement that Darryl made to 60 Minutes that if he had a fatal disease, he would strap dynamite around himself, take out the Glen Canyon Damn. You'll actually see Darryl watching himself say that on 60 Minutes. Yeah. That was at that law conference. And I just want to say one thing about that quickly, is that Earth First was inspired by a novel by Edward Abbey called The Monkey Wrench Gang. And the dream of these eco-tours in the Monkey Wrench Gang, this gang of 4 people who go around cutting down billboards because they block the view of the desert and doing all kinds of monkey wrenching. Their dream was to take out the Glen Canyon Damn, because Glen Canyon, which by the way Dave Brower considers his greatest defeat because he didn't go out there and look at it before the dam was approved, and so he didn't fight to stop it. It's number 2 in beauty behind the Grand Canyon. It's not just some little canyon. And many environmentalists who were around back then feel it's just one of the greatest horrors that we let happen. And so the dream is to take out the Glen Canyon Dam, and the reporter specifically asked him, if you had a fatal disease, would you strap dynamite around yourself and take out the Glen Canyon Dam? And so as part of the mythology, Darryl said after his guy, we just got pretty rowdy. They were being interviewed by 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes, my God. Darryl's dream. He must have been planning it for weeks. So that was what was behind that. And then to see that thrown up there on the news when he's just been blown up, that's just heinous. And this thing with the Uzi, I mentioned that too before showing the video. I saw that picture on Darryl's dresser for months. It was a joke. Can't the FBI laugh? No. Judy's nickname was Bulldog, because Judi is a radical feminist, and she was largely anti-male, and she's a very strong woman. So it was a parody of her self-image. I don't even know where that Uzi came from, or if it's real or not. It was just a crack up.
It wasn't real, and it came from the photographer. And there's some suspicion. This photographer was a friend of Bruce Anderson from the Anderson Valley Advocate. Bruce, what's his name, right?
An acquaintance.
An acquaintance, just some guy. There's a possibility that this man actually was an FBI plant, and it was an attempt at character assassination. Things have been done like this throughout the history of this country. The Black Panthers, other groups in this country.
Okay. Yeah. The reason we're doing the showing tonight is there are about 7 of us who are making a 15-minute outreach video for Redwood Summer that we want to finish next week and send out to 500 groups. I'm going to be touring around the country showing video because this is actually an incredibly powerful thing. What happens if we save the redwoods this year and then go down to Big Mountain next year? Or go to New Jersey, put down some of the chemical plants the following year? That's what we stand to do, and we can do it non-violently. That's really powerful. Earth First has a bad name because of monkey wrenching and this whole thing about violence, which is just a bad rap. But this Redwood Summer is bigger than Earth First. It may have been started by some Earth First. It was actually started by some guy, a crazy guy who was hitchhiking through town, and he suggested it to Judi. Some little angel came down, I guess. That's the really powerful thing. And there was an action just a week or so ago with 15 people who went down and ran around through the trees at Pacific Lumber's land. And one of the guys with his camcorder, a log came to him and put a spike up to his throat. And he's got a scratch there. I think it's really important that we get large numbers of people out there for safety as well. So this is a benefit to help us finish this video. It's going to cost us $3,000. So we'll pass a hat afterwards, but I just want you to, maybe I'll leave a hat out there if you want to leave during the video. But, I'm doing this all the time because my friends were bombed. And I was really close to being in that car too. I feel it very deeply. And this is a really horrible wrong that was done to people who have sacrificed everything to try to keep the life support systems of the planet going.
What's next here? Let's do freedom. It's my objective to get arrested or shot while singing. So that one might get me arrested. This one might get me shot.
We are the most important generation of human beings to ever walk this planet.
Earth First believes that the worldwide environmental crisis is so dire, they must shock the American public, industry, and even mainstream environmentalists with their words and actions.
If I knew I had a fatal disease, I would definitely do something like strap dynamite on myself and take out Glen Canyon Damn.
Well, I know there's a lot of enthusiastic Earth First types out there, but I also know there's a few stodgy law students. So I want to loosen things up a bit. Start off with a chant, And I'd like everybody to participate in this. Even if you don't actually believe the words of the chant, I want you to consider it an intellectual exercise. It goes like this. Death to the fascist robot that preys on the life of the planet. Try it. Death to the fascist robot that preys on the life of the planet. Go! Death to the fascist robot that preys on the life of the planet. Oh! Death to the fascist robot that preys on the life of the planet. Yeah! Death to the fascist robot that preys on the life of the planet. Oh! Now I know that there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of scorn for domestic species that are tearing up this planet. The cattle, the horses, the sheep. But what is the most domesticated species roving this planet today? And why? Why do we domesticate species? To eat them! That's right, to enslave them. To make them the pawns of some superior being. That's us! All of you have clothes on right now. But I know that as a lot of my sister and brothers Earth Firsters like to say, there is still a flicker of the green fire, of the wildness in every one of your eyes. I want you to just feel it for a moment. And I want you to just howl with me just for a little bit. It's an intellectual exercise. And I want you to feel 3.5 billion years of evolution pouring up through your toes and up into your brain and expanding at your ears. Here we go. Just a little howl, okay? 1, hell with the count. Just do it. Pictographs, whatever those things are up there, of Hatfield and Adams, I feel another emotion, a primal emotion. 3.5 billion years of evolution have taught me to feel this emotion if I reach deep enough. That emotion is anger. That emotion is to get on my haunches and prepare for the attack. We growl, right? So when you see Hatfield, what do you do? And then just to let them know here you are, you howl again. And maybe even sing a little bit. Clear-cutting chainsaws, killing the trees, disrupting everything that lives in peace. Our animal friends are on the run, but there's nowhere to go when the job is done. How can we stand by while this all takes place? We've got to stop this inhuman race. No compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise in defense of Mother Earth. Earth first! You can say it again. Earth first! Strip mining mountains by the ton, digging up the uranium. Bald eagle looking for a place to land, but it's all gone for nuclear plants. Must we poison the water cook a piece of toast, or blow dry our hair. No compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise in defense of Mother Earth. Earth first! Don't we know there's gonna come a time when the tables will be turned? What will we say to answer for these crimes and for our lessons never learned? Woo! How many more spotted owls are we gonna let the Sierra Club compromise? How many more Nicaraguans and El Salvadorans are we gonna put to death so that we compromise? How many more PCBs should we put in the atmosphere? 1 more million, 2 more million, how many? There's no more room for compromise. The compromises have already been made. The time is now to draw the line in front of us, take 4 steps forward, and get right in their face and push them back over the cliff like a chuck-water buffalo. All native species of the earth, the land is yours by right of birth. But the corporations can't stand to see the way that we were meant to be. Our sisters and brothers are dying every day while we drink our coffee and look the other way. No compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise. Come on, you Sierra Clubbers! No compromise, no compromise. So how do we make up for our mistakes? The answer is whatever it takes. Now the pen is mightier than the sword, but a monkey wrench can do a whole lot more. The revolution is just around the bend. Will Mother Earth be your foe or your friend? No compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise, no compromise. No compromise in defense of Mother Earth. Earth first, again. Earth first, come on you Autobots. Earth first, come on you law students. Earth first, yeah. No compromise in defense of Mother Earth. Say it, Earth first.
That's it. Lights, please. So as you can see, as far as the FBI is concerned, Darryl has an image problem. I want to say something about that song, Will the Fetus Be Aborted? I remember when he wrote that, and that was specifically for the opening of a Planned Parenthood in Ukiah. Now, you may recall that this anti-abortionist who's taking responsibility for the bombing said that he was targeting Judi because of her involvement in that particular demonstration. It makes sense to me, although Darryl and Judi don't buy it, that there's this guy. I mean, that song was written specifically to have someone take this $20 guitar that Darryl had just bought for this action and smash it over his head. although maybe, they got blown up instead. I don't know. That's a possibility. The comment about bombing in that song, this Reverend Royal is a minister in Ukiah. And he so graciously said, oh, well, we won't bomb your abortion clinic. So the line in there is like saying, oh, well, gee, thanks. Okay, we won't bomb your church. Okay, so it's not like anything where he's advocating bombing. I don't know if that was clear. But Darryl and Judi have written songs that have been very provocative. And they've changed, actually. Darryl used to write songs about tree spiking before that moratorium. And now he tends to write songs more about mill workers. He's got a song about Potter Valley, which I didn't put in for time reasons, and another one, Where Are We Going to Work When the Trees Are Gone? But I did want to clarify that, because as you can see, it's very easy to take anything that Darryl does out of context and make it look like he's just some kind of, violent person. I was going through my video. I've been shooting Earth First video for 2 years, and I've got about 30 hours of Darryl and Judi, and I've got like every one of Darryl's songs. There are only a few I could use. He's got a song called We're All Dead Ducks, quack, quack. And in the last verse it says something like, we'll blow those rigs into eternity, and let's have that congressman's head. Again, it's farce. It's just like the Uzi in the picture. But I figured that, I'm not trying to make them look any mellower than they are. They are really concerned. And they are, as Darryl said, warriors of the earth. You have to, the thing about warrior consciousness is you recognize that, yes, there is an enemy force that has to be confronted. You can't just sit around and hope it goes away or sit around and negotiate. You have to actually engage that beast. And Earth First, when we talk about warriors of the earth, or rainbow warriors as specified in the Hopi prophecies, we are talking about nonviolent people who have almost a Zen-like warrior stance. Yeah.
One of the major things that's got me, two things, the fact, showing the opposition that's against what we're doing, get their reaction on video. That was very important. There's no more cars. That woman standing there screaming and yelling. But what really got me was the woman was standing there chewing the gum with the red thing with the t-shirt. And that fellow next to her, that's the guy you gotta watch. The guy with the camera, the tall guy, standing with the tall hat, that's the, excuse my language, that's the cracker that will mess with you, baby. He will get up in the nighttime and do harm to you. I mean, you got a little camera to take your picture, but believe me, they don't let that picture be shown to someone else. You're going down the street, mind your own business, and out of nowhere, someone pops you. That's the guy you gotta watch. I mean, to get a picture of him, it's very vital to show you exactly who he is, what he looks like, and let it be known to him, we know you.
Actually, I was more concerned about the car on his right, which I don't know if it was in that shot, but there were some FBI agents sitting in a car watching this.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, Earth First has been targeted for 4 years. It seems really unlikely to me that when the car got bombed, Judi had just left from Ukiah the night before, and Darryl had been down earlier, and it seems very unlikely that some local person, had a bomb in his car and knew that when Judi left her home that night she wasn't coming back, and followed her all the way down to Oakland, and knew that she was not going to park somewhere like a security garage where he could have access to get into her car and plant the bomb. To me, it seems whoever did this had to have access to phone taps on her. We also know that people are completely freaked out over there about the potential for Redwood Summer. Locally, because we're going to shut down the cutting of old growth. There's just too much momentum going that way now. And they're concerned about that. But
considering the time, I want to start passing around the hat.
By the way, the money you pay to get in here is for the greens. What we're trying to do, this money that we're asking you for now, is to make a 15-minute video. It's got some stuff up here, but this is a special thing I just put together to show you what Darryl and Judi are like. And it's that we're making 500 copies, and our budget's $3,000. And you can also make an advance purchase of it if you want. And you can come to me afterwards, and that would be $10 to $25 sliding scale for the 15-minute video. But let's see, where was I on the FBI?
Andy, we got one job.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? Yeah.
Just wanted to ask you, what percentage of old growth redwoods are in protected areas, and what percentage would be protected by forests forever?
Okay.
And how much would it cost to protect them all?
Well, the costs have not been determined exactly because Headwaters is not for sale. 95% of the old growth forest has been cut. It's gone. Okay, and I think it's about 65% of what remains is in parks. However, those parks are not ecologically designed. It was all negotiation, what land Pacific Lumber would sell to us. You've got Avenue of the Giants, which we call Avenue of the Spike Tops, because these forests need a dense mass to hold the fog in. They get about a third of their water from the fog drippings. Okay, so if you just have a row, let's say an eighth of a mile wide, along the highway for scenic value, the fog is blowing off it, and so these trees are dying. You go down Avenue of the Giants, when you go up there to go to Redwood Summer, look at them, and you'll see the top 40 or 50 feet are just bare. Okay, and a lot of what was preserved in parks was also secondary. Yes, you can make your checks out to Eco Videograph.
The EMDM.
One thing, I just want to say something about it. Just because it's in a park doesn't mean it's protected. In, I think, the last issue of Audubon, you might have read about Sequoia National Forest. They're logging it. They're leaving the big trees, what they're called museum trees, but they're cutting down everything else. So just because it's in a park doesn't mean it's
I want to clarify that. There's some difference between the Park Service and the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. Those are the three major agencies at the federal level which are managing our land. The Park Service does preserve areas, and there's some kind of development for tourism. However, the Forest Service is run by the Department of Agriculture, and it is run like it's a corn farm. They have a policy of mixed use. So what they basically feel is that, oh, once the trees are cut and they grow back out about 15 years, well, the recreational value is back. But it's like 90% based on timber uses in terms of that mixed use. Yeah.
I used to work up in Oregon. I used to fight forest fires and was out in the woods a lot and saw what had been done, saw what the Forest Service did and what the timber companies did. I was on one fire once. Most fires in the forest are caused by timber company operations. It was on this one unit, a hill sloped like this, completely logged till it was just like it had been bombed out, and I mean something would go from here to the other side of the campus. And up on the top was this really unusual stand of trees they left standing. There were these big old trees. This was up I don't know if you've ever gone from Eugene east to Three Sisters, towards Bend, beautiful Mackenzie River Valley. You're driving up, it looks like there's beautiful forest. You don't see any clear cuts, or you used not to. When I saw these trees, I saw there were like 4 or 5 of them, all standing up real tall, straight, and right behind it, nothing, been bombed out. But these four or five trees in a row were there, and I went and I looked at the Forest Service map, and it was described as a cosmetic stand. What a cosmetic stand means is that you're a tourist coming to beautiful Oregon so you can go fishing up on the Mackenzie River, and you're driving up and you see that cosmetic stand, you don't realize how destroyed the forest has been because they've left that cosmetic stand there. This is something to consider. They used to leave cosmetic stands. When you drive up the Mackenzie River Highway now, you see big, ugly holes in the forest. They are so adamant about getting every last tree, they're not even caring about tourism anymore. It was the town of Willits Chamber of Commerce decided to back Redwood Summer Road.
Oh yeah,
The skunk train. They fought Georgia Pacific, was it, or Louisiana Pacific? Wanted to log and did log woods that were viewed from the famous tourist skunk train. I mean, this is how crazy they are. The Willits Chamber of Commerce is now back in Redwood Summer.
Yeah, you see, it's so outrageous. There's nothing like going up there and seeing the clear cuts. You go up, it's like seeing the skin scraped off someone's arm. It is, and that's why I got into doing video, because I realized that reading about this in magazines wasn't enough. And the video doesn't do it justice. Although there are some good videos that are out about with flying over these mountains. But I mean, the private land that was cut up until like the 50s didn't have to be replanted. And you have deserts up there in the middle of the Cascades. And we're talking about 90% of the forest. The ancient forest has been cut. It's gone. It will never be an ancient forest again because, as I said, it takes 500 to 1,000 years to grow back. You go into an old growth forest, and if you want to go to the greatest one I know of, go to Rockefeller Grove, which if someone wants to do an action, I want to change that name to David Brower Grove or Rachel Carson Grove or something. rotten flower grove, but it's got those 360-foot trees. And you go there, and then you leave, and everything else that looks like forest to you looks like it's been bombed out. You learn that sensitivity, you learn the earth, and that's also a neat experience too. But we have to, I'll answer your question, Armisia, and then we have to wrap up here because we have to be out of here at 10. That means sort of packed up and out of here. Yeah.
Just to quickly reiterate what's been said, I've known Darryl for more than 3 years and Judi for about 2. And these are not people who would be carrying a bomb, making a bomb, anti-personnel style or otherwise. I've been around the campfire too long with these people. They're just not that kind of people.
Yeah.
How many FBI agents showed up? How fast was the bomb?
I don't know, but it's pretty outrageous. There have been 45 death threats against Judi. A logger did plow into her car a year ago, and it was the same logger that they had blockaded the day before. Now, Judi has said that she forgives this guy because he's a speeded out alcoholic logger who's, scared. He doesn't know what to do. These people don't know. I mean, once the trees are gone, they can't conceive that maybe we could reorganize the economy up there. Maybe we could develop some kind of sustainable economy. They don't believe that, and probably most people don't believe that. But it's the only thing that can be done if we don't want to destroy the planet, and we want people to be able to keep on with some kind of decent life up there. We have to support them. That's the thing, too. A lot of Earth Firsters used to say, well, our job is just to save the last biodiversity on the planet. Dave Foreman says that. Like, he doesn't have any faith that society is going to make it through. But he's hoping that maybe when things collapse, we'll still have some parts of the biodiversity. So Earth Firsters have had that kind of defensive attitude. And initially, up in Humboldt, there was this animosity towards the loggers. But now I think what we'll find is that once Forest Forever passes, a lot of us Earth Firsters will be up there still trying to help the loggers get a sustainable economy. And we have to take responsibility for that. Because these people, they are the first ones to complain about waste. They are disgusted with how the rest of us live. They aren't beasts. And despite what that gentleman said about being concerned about that guy there, 6 of us walked into 1,000 loggers who were doing a demonstration against Earth First. There were only like 8 Earth Firsters at that time in Humboldt County. And it was pretty scary. There was a guy who wanted to punch my face in. But we went in there and we just trusted and we talked with them. And they aren't that pleasant. There are some crackpots. But it's not like, every logger, even if they yell and scream at you, you have to feel physically threatened. I mean, it's pretty intense to be yelled at by some guy who's about 8'3" and 700 pounds. But I don't want you to be scared because of that. There is a risk up there, definitely. But the more of us that are up there, the safer it will be. And there are a lot of experienced people from nonviolent movements outside of Earth First who are getting involved. And we haven't had any real serious injuries to any of us except for this bombing.
There are loggers.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Okay, thanks.
You gotta clear out. Take a flyer if you haven't gotten one. They have a big tree talk.
Thank you.
If you want to know more about what you can do to join Redwood Summer, also contact us and tell them that you're out there.
Oh, real quick, one more important thing. Next Wednesday is the first big demonstration action in Samoa outside Arcata in Louisiana Pacific Docks. You have the phone numbers, get in touch. We need a lot of people to go up there Wednesday to protest. This is the place where they ship logs to Mexico and jobs to Mexico. And it's the first big action for Redwood Summer. Please come next Wednesday.
What are you talking about? Give me a call wrong.
Tell your boss. Your own boss, even better.
I did.
I'm not very keen.
I'm wondering, I'm curious about this.
I haven't heard what it is since then. Well, it was 3 years as of the year ago. The day of an investigation. Of course, it's been reference to a year and a half. It's been 3 years. The guy, Spy, got involved with it. He had been working on it about 18 years. But the FBI, in a way that we don't know the details on, been following him for 3 years. good article in the High Country News. If you want to give me a call, I'll try to find a copy for you.
'cause they'd be too expensive.
Oh, okay.